Hey, everybody, welcome to our weekly Ecosystem Office Hours call. I am your host, Jinx, and joined, as always, by the best and the brightest in the Pocket Network ecosystem. We'll kick things off with protocol updates from Art, and then we'll do Foundation, and then we have a big demo today that I think a lot of folks have been waiting for. So, Art, over to you.
Yeah, just a few updates today. So the next version of the protocol 1.27 is on alpha and beta. It removes a bunch of state bloats. So we're monitoring that, and if everything so far looks good, from the best of my knowledge from talking to the team, that will go live early next week, and then there will be a quick fast follow on 1.28. So the moment 127 goes to mainnet, we're going to update alpha and beta to 1.28 to have a second release at the end of next week. Um, yeah, and there are going to be, besides improvements to state bloat, there's going to be there are going to be some flags added to the relay miner. Cool. So that's the update for that. We have a bunch of top priorities right now at Grove in a mixture between path and the protocol. So we have a tokenomics PR that's also going live in 1.27. I apologize, I meant to say that as well, but all the tokenomics changes with everyone starting to mint tokens will go live as well. You can listen to my update last week about what that kind of looks like. We have working versions of on 1.27 as well. There have been improvements to um, processing requests for Comet BFT and REST and WebSockets as well. So when 127 goes live, all of that will go live as well. And we already have customers lined up for the WebSockets front, so that's good. Um, on top of that, we are going to introduce a shelter network again. So shelter network, or formerly Outpost network, basically it is a backup network. There are, given that we still have a small supply side, and given that periodically all the node runners supporting a given chain may go down for one reason or another, we are going to have a fallback in place so we can continue servicing requests at the gateway layer. And what that looks like is it will most likely be falling back to a couple centralized providers. So people that are currently not in our rotation, because given the fact that we can't process the request on chain, we want to be able to fall back off chain, at least for the time being. This isn't a forever solution, but like at where we are today, post migration, this is something we need again. So we are going to put it in place again. We noticed this with Ripple originally when we launched. We had a couple dedicated providers, but there were issues given it's a new chain. So we actually decided to run Ripple ourselves internally because we can control the entire stack vertically. And we're falling back a huge chunk of the requests. I think today we're at like 50-50 between on-chain and off-chain, given we have some dedicated customers that are using us exclusively for the EVM. All right. On top of that, we are working on, continuously working on quality of service and observability. Something that I've enabled the team to do starting this past week is allowing more of the team to interact with all of the node runners. So in the past, when we were a much larger organization, we wanted to kind of silo the engineers from having to interact with the team, given that given with the node runners, given that there's a lot of conversations that can go back and forth, and we would have people in the middle to kind of help facilitate and answer. But given the current size of the team, and we're having the people directly working on features like the relay miner features and the WebSocket and BFT features directly talk to the node runners, and that's been a net positive and net add. So if you see more new names that you don't usually talk to, start talking to, if you're a node runner, that's why. And so what we've done in the process is we have extremely detailed observability for the first time ever, where we can see which request failed on which node runner with which error coming back from the servicer and the relay miner. And then we can connect it to which application had caused that issue. Because sometimes, we always periodically have customers that reach out to us saying, hey, something's not working. We can now, without having to store the specifics of the request, we can now basically tie a specific relay to a specific node runner at a specific point in time. So what we've been doing is periodically tagging the node runners, being like, hey, your AVAX node is done. Hey, your Polygon node is storing a 404, so on and so forth. So this has been a net value add for us and our customers, because we've been able to really triage very quickly It took a lot of dedicated effort to get this out the door, but because of we're on Path, and because we knew we were going to need this on Path, and we didn't have it in the older version of Path, the original portal, we foresaw needing this, so it only took us a couple weeks to really get it up and running, get all the internal dashboards there. So like we are in the best possible state we've ever been with observability. So those are kind of the main priorities on the side, always talking to customers. Um, I have a few more Ripple specific customers that I am in the middle of having conversations with to bring their traffic to us. Um, on top of that, I think I mentioned we last time we re-signed Kaya for another year of service. Talking to them about getting more of their networks to start using us as well. And then we have a couple new NDAs that we signed this past week with very large organizations just to um, explore potential partnerships. And we are going to start working through those. As a reminder, these usually have timelines on the order of 6 to 18 months. So I'm just letting you know we've kicked off a couple new ones and maybe something will transpire by the end of the year. I think that's the general gist of it. I will note that both Olshansky and Fred are out this week. So that's why it's been fairly quiet from us. They tend to be the people who proactively communicate, but work is still going on because the rest of the team knows what their priorities are and they have been working through it. I'm done.
Beautiful. Thanks, Art. A couple questions on that. One is if you're running nodes from an altruist perspective, is there any reason why you wouldn't have them still be routing those requests through Pocket Network to the nodes that you're running?
Yes, because those node runners, because right now, where we are with the amount of suppliers that we have, if we cannot process the request on the network, that means if we try to fall back, we are most likely going to fall back to the same provider or same set of providers. And the only time this will happen is when all providers are bad, meaning that right now, when we fetch a new session and we get all the nodes that are available, if Path's specific quality of service implementation for that chain say that every single node is bad, based on whatever our criteria is for that chain, the right now it randomly chooses one of the bad nodes, hoping it's the least bad node. It just depends like what's going on. But in an ideal solution, we would go to a completely different provider outside the network for the time being, and fetch from them. This is a stopgap solution from a customer perspective, right? The network isn't resilient enough right now for various different reasons, right? Like it's just a lot of different chains and they all have problems at all different times. That does not mean that this is a narrative violation. This is just at the very onset of where we are today, we have issues that appear periodically. And some of these providers are one person running and they have to sleep and they can't fix the issue right away. And some providers have whole teams, but they have multiple issues that may happen at once. So this is a way to kind of protect ourselves until we are able to get a bit more resilient. Because
Okay,
we will
got it.
lose
So you weren't
we'll lose customers and have lost customers in the past for not having something like this.
right. So you weren't talking about running nodes separately like the altruist network. You're talking about having a fallback to other dedicated services.
Correct. This would be a fallback to some centralized provider, and that we currently is not in is not in the rotation somehow. Is not a supplier on Pocket. And it's only for a period of time. The only reason we are running Ripple internally is because A, they're paying us to run a node for them internally, and B, we had a very large customer that needed service immediately, and now we have more customers coming online that need consistent service. And given that Ripple is kind of the primary focus for us right now is in customer retention, we are doing whatever it is that they need. So we've always needed WebSockets, but they need it immediately. So it has become priority one. They needed access to Comet VFT endpoints because they're a Cosmos chain. So we made it priority number one as well. They needed a REST API as this Pocket, as this Radix. We also made it priority number one. Now, so multi-chain endpoints became a priority immediately because we have people paying us to make it a priority immediately.
Of course. So we are also have requirements on QoS that are F chains program requirements. I think it's probably a worthwhile use of our time to have you and Tracy sync up on what an F chains report card might look like. in order to to make sure that we're meeting the QoS requirements of that program.
Sure. Yeah, that's not a problem. We've planned on doing that anyway at the end of the month.
Beautiful.
Because
Okay.
this was the first month that we have all this up and running, and there are issues with the protocol at times, and there are issues with the
Yeah.
there's been a massive issue with Polygon, right, across the board.
Yeah, I was seeing a
But
bunch of messages about that.
yeah, but some, depending on the client you chose, it was either working or it was not working. So we had a like 60% success rate on it, and so we
Got it.
needed to figure out why and what. And in this case, we didn't fall back. We just kind of dealt with it because we don't have the fallback for Polygon ready, but we do have it ready for other chains.
Okay. And then also, I know that there has been some clarity needed around how metrics reporting and accountability were done within the network. I know that you guys had some different numbers on the number of CUs being served versus what was being reported on Pocket Scan, for instance. And then we talked last week about changes in 127 that would potentially break aspects of Pocket Scan reporting. Is there any progress on getting that metric reporting accurate?
Hey, good afternoon. I'm good. How you doing?
Good.
Excellent.
Did you have a beard last time?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's Eric. Can you mute him?
I think your beard was longer.
Might have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who
You had
is
just come out
It's
of the
Eric's
woods.
son.
I did. Yeah. The hair
Eric's
was.
son? Where is that at?
That's
You're
what.
muted.
Oh,
We're
Jesus
fine.
Christ. Yeah, thank you. What the
Yeah.
fuck?
All right.
Sorry, did you hear the question?
Yes, there's a thread going, and Olshansky began responding to Ramiro specifically about the fields that are needed, because he understands what is needed. Um, I think I'm not going to speak for him. I don't know if there's going to be a solution right now, but I think the way he's thinking about it is right now we need to solve a bloat problem, which is the bigger problem here. So we're going to remove the bloat problem, and then we're going to come back and re-add what it is that we actually need. Is how I think he's thinking about it the last time I talked to him about it. However, I know he was proactively contributing to the discussion before he went on his vacation.
Okay. Because I know that that was like an important thing. A number of folks have reached out to me and talked about the challenges with metrics, and including like reward metrics as well. It's if we're not able to effectively read some of that data, that ends up putting an additional onus on folks to run their own indexers and databases, just trying to track things like how many rewards have gone out for what things. So I do know that that's a fairly high priority in the mix.
I have the same requirement for running growth as well. So it is a personal pain point, and he knows about it.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the
No
update.
problem.
Okay, so moving into foundation updates, I've had lots and lots of questions about the most important one to a lot of folks, which is exchange listings. All I can say for anyone who's gone through the exchange listing process, they come with long lead times and due diligence requirements and figuring out technical implementation questions and all the rest of that. And generally, we are also bound under NDAs. So I would love to give y'all a more concrete answer, but what I will have to say for now is we are targeting 4 additional listings. 2 of them appear to be very close. We will, of course, give more information on that once we can. On the rest of the service providers' updates, Wintermute seems to be doing really well. They have been concentrating their liquidity efforts primarily on Qcoin and Gate. And so we have worked with Efficient Frontier to have them start shifting their efforts to concentrating liquidity on other exchanges aside from those 2. At any point in time, you can always request if you are interested in like the deep dive detail. We'd be happy to provide screenshots and access to reports and things along that line. So feel free to reach out however you like. Also, F-Chain's program does seem to be cranking along as expected. We are waiting on the validator rewards fixes that are coming out in V127 to complete staking the validators.
I'm on the phone.
I know some folks have been waiting on that aspect for a long time, but it just didn't seem to be any purpose to that while we were still waiting on some of those things being fixed. So that's where we stand on those. And of course, if you have any questions on that, you can always reach out to Tracy directly. We have had the Shannon Reward Pool allocation recommendations submitted out to the Oversight Committee for a couple of weeks now. Zatar, do you want to give an update on that?
Sure. I need to meet or chat with the other members just to finalize our positions, but yeah, it looks like the recommendations are hunky-dory, so I'll follow up. Hopefully by next week we'll have an answer. I was also waiting. There was some question about whether the migration had completed to Shannon. From a technical perspective and every other perspective, is that all complete?
I mean, I suppose that that would be a question of opinions on who signifies what level of completion. All services are running on Shannon. All node runners are running on Shannon. All traffic coming through the network is being served by Shannon-based nodes. So while there are bug fixes and other feature enhancements still in progress, I would say that the migration to Shannon is complete. Certainly open to hearing other opinions on that.
Okay, well, thanks for that.
Okay, sounds good. Breezy's typing in here. I guess we can say the migration is complete considering we are operating 100% on Shannon. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, there's nothing of Morse left running in the network at all. So from a pure implementation perspective, I would say it's complete. We haven't, of course, seen the full resurgence of relay volume that we are hoping to see yet, but that's not really a completion of migration consideration as much as it is a reuptake of existing customer base and new ones coming out. We are also, from the foundation perspective, working on expanding our regional ambassador program. We have an MOU and a working implementation in progress, or in planning, I suppose, at this point, in Korea for our first gateway there. We have a conversation in progress now in Japan for our first path-based gateway there. And we are talking to Vietnam this evening for our first path-based application implementation there. So we are pushing to horizontalize out in our gateway strategy as much as possible, as we've outlined in the past, is an indicator. As we get these pilot programs online, we are going to be expanding out to trying to reach out to create as many sort of small scale localized implementations of Path as possible around the world. We would like to see strong local representation in a variety of languages and markets. So that's going to be part of what the foundation focus has been on, and we're working on simplifying the process of implementing those things for small cap users who don't have a ton of technical complexity in their needs. And that would be using both the Path SDK and the open source portal repo that Grove has been kind enough to push out and publish for folks to be able to use. Additionally, we have some new tooling that is in progress right now. Raid Guild has been working through that, along with support from some of our partners like Breezy. Thanks and shout out there. So we are going to be implementing our Pocket Network branded UI kit across all of our internal tooling, and you'll see that in the explorer.pocket.network. along with some other more specific tooling, including a health check or status check that is similar to what Grove puts out, but is a little bit more focused on how many node runners are running individual chains and actual node runner data versus the network health data. And we also have a DeFi dashboard in progress so that it is easier for DeFi dashboard or DeFi users to see all of that in one shot, and incorporating the Axelar bridge into that dashboard directly so that there's one place to sort of interface with the entire DeFi side of the marketplace. And I think that is... the Docs project. So we are going to be kicking that off probably in the next couple of weeks. We have an open conversation right now with Raid Guild to help us coordinate on that. I have asked before and certainly am still open to additional folks. If you have worked with docs writing in the past, technical docs, or you've contributed to the Pocket Network docs, docs.pocket.network in the past, we would love to have your assistance on that. It is going to be a super, super chunky project. So if you want to reach out to, I see Merdod typing in chat. Merdod's probably a good one to reach out to, or to me directly. We are going to be trying to spin that up as soon as possible. Also, for anyone who's following the repo, you will see that we have PRs open now for the IBC support factor. That is needed for us to get the Axelar gateway live. So if you're following along on waiting for the gateways to be rolled out, that will be where you can see that progress. And yeah, as Merdod has mentioned, the governance is in progress. We have 3 folks who are currently on the governance committee now working on structure around that. That's Merdod, Cryptocorn, and Mike Mazinga, along with myself and Tracy and some other foundation contributors. It is a difficult thing to create a good governance system that accounts for the things that we hold to be valuable, but also to make use of the governance tooling that we have in place. And so we're working on trying to find the right sweet spot there to both, account for and provide a microphone for builders who are actively contributing to the ecosystem, but also to make use for some of the commonly adopted governance tactics and tooling that already exist within the Cosmos ecosystem. So hopefully we will have more on that very soon. All right, that was a whole lot of stuff. And we do have a demo ahead of us. So any questions, if you want to get those in now, please feel free to type those in chat while we're answering some of the stuff here. Zatar asked, will any of the work done by the old regime on governance be used? We've all looked through that, and I think that there's a pretty unanimous opinion that there's not much of value there, unless you're interested in reading theses and term papers. But aside from some academic exploration, there's not really much there which has proved to be usable or useful in any particular fashion. The concept of citizen and trying to come up with all these different ranks of citizenship with yeah, Miss Kitty, I see you. It is just wildly overcomplicated and works to accomplish the opposite of what we want, which is greater participation by people within the ecosystem. If you have to take a 6-week course to understand the governance model, it's too complicated. Jinx, I saw some chat in the den on search engine visibility. Can you give an update? Does the foundation have an SEO person on tap or looking at this? Yeah, we have a whole ass marketing team and significant expertise on SEO and on placement and indexing and all the rest of those things. There is nothing that is not done from an SEO optimization perspective. You can see that all of the links are correctly indexed within Google. However, there are some delistings that have occurred on a link-by-link basis, which appears to be targeted. And we have dealt with targeted attacks from an SEO and web listing perspective in the past. Michael O'Rourke's website, o'rourke.org, was completely taken offline with a targeted report campaign that suggested that that was a porn domain. So this is not new. We have dealt with a number of these kinds of things in the past. I wish it was as simple as we needed to fix something from an SEO or marketing perspective, but that's just simply not the case. So we are working to try to identify where the Black Hat campaign is coming from and how to counteract it. And I see Web3 Soulmind is typing. Would it be interesting to build something like Adapt that incentivizes people who are seeking and offering new potential clients for Pocket network demand, and if the new clients emerge out of these offers, they get paid in Pocket? Sounds like maybe some sort of affiliate type program. That might be of interest to folks. It's certainly worth asking around in Discord and seeing how much support would be. I can't see any reason why it would be a bad idea to have that. So. Yeah, dig around.
I'll chime in here. Like I mentioned it 1 or 2 weeks ago. Like we are happy to pay for referrals to Grove, but we have had, I think, maybe 1 or 2 that came outside of our sales team in the last couple few years. It is a whole job to do this, like to basically manage that relationship. So if you're wanting to participate, like just let me know. I'm happy to work with you. Like I would love a community driven sales team so it doesn't, so there's more people doing this besides myself and Fred and others.
Absolutely. Yeah, sounds like a good idea to me. So
Yeah.
if you're just looking for market validation, then you've got it. That sounds great. If you're looking for participation, then I would say, push that out in Discord and see who else might be interested in it. But we are always interested in things that help drive additional adoption. So super happy to hear that kind of a thing. All right, let's go ahead and get shifted in because I know the demo here takes a little bit of time. So Julio and Alan, I'm going to hand it over to you. And something that we've been very excited about, the Igniter platform is preparing to go live. So we're going to walk through the node runner process of getting that rolling today, and then also probably touch briefly on what that looks like for end users. So folks, I'm going to hand it to y'all.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Jan.
Yep.
So we're very happy to present this. We've been working for some time on this. Essentially, as James pointed out, Igniter is a platform. It's actually composed of at least 2 applications. One that is intended for node runners and one that is intended for end users. But the general idea is that you have a provider service, which pretty much serves as a facade for node runners to offer their services in a compliant way so that users can have like one-click staking, a couple of click staking. I did a presentation earlier. We're going to be sharing all that in the repository if it's not ready. It's not there already. But right now, what we really wanted to do is kind of go through the setup process, which is relatively complex. But we would love to get as much feedback now that we're still in testnet before we go to mainnet. We built this with our own experience in Pocket Scan running nodes. So obviously all feedback is welcome as well. So pretty much I'm going to go through a setup of the provider application, which essentially the sign-in process, I'm going to just touch briefly on that, is based on when you set up this, you have to specify to the service through environment variables the private key that owns this application. And that's how later on you can come back and set it up. That's because it's completely decentralized. Please feel free to interrupt me at any time and ask me questions because that's what we're looking for here. Don't hesitate at all. So authentication is using a wallet. In this case, we're using Sooth Wallet, but eventually any wallet can catch up and do. We're not doing anything special. We are just signing a personal message. So once you come into the application for the first time, like you will not see, you need to go through what we call a bootstrap. This bootstrap process starts by gathering some information, like this is the identity of your app, which is based out of that private key I talked about earlier. It's an identifier of the application. Let me get, I'm sorry. Then we require to know like which API, channel API, RESTful API you're going to be using. This is how we can pull chain data and perform any operation related to the blockchain. So I'm just going to use the beta one for this example. As you can see, it immediately pulls the minimum network state from the net. So we also require an indexer API URL, which is used to gather rewards information. You can later see that dashboard. This is some branding information. Pretty much, let's say Dupont, which is ours for now. I'm just gonna use this as an example. So here we go. Here's some of the concepts that I really wanted to get some feedback if anyone can right now. So there are fundamentally all this involves is like either management of keys and relay miners. So these are the main concepts, like chain related concepts. And then we have another concept called address group. So essentially a relay miner runs on a particular region. And so right now we are using that as a way for you to automatically configure your services or your URLs. So you need to specify, like, let's say you're going to be running in Europe, and the way you label this Europe in your URLs is like with the EU keyword. So you would create this. This is just a little CRUD so that you can later use it. You're going to see more on how this is used in a moment. Then naturally you have the concept of a relay miner, which is just basically some data we collect, like the domain, the region this relay miner is on, and a particular identity that is also used. Let's say you have a relay miner on here, just a name, relay name. And we already said our domain is the pub. So I have, let's keep it simple. Any questions until here? These are the two very basic concepts for getting things set up. No questions, really?
Looks like we're good.
Okay. So then you need to select the services you're going to be providing, like all the services that you want to provide. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, I'll rate this fit. Okay, that's the lead, which is known one. So basically, we're trying to pull. We get this from the blockchain using that RESTful API you provided already. So as I don't know how familiar everyone here is, but essentially when you configure your services, when you stake on a given service, you have to provide the different protocols that you will support on that service. So that's why we wanted to have these concepts around like relay miner and region. Like in our case, was that a question?
Es que no son, bueno, es que igual.
Oh, sorry. So I'm gonna go with this one for now, and I'm gonna stop here for a moment just so you know what I'm looking for. So the Igniter provider, whenever the user wants to stake, the stake application will call it and say, hey, I need any amount of nodes or nodes for this amount of money. And it needs to generate this configurations right there. Like it needs to say, okay, I'm gonna put these nodes on these services And these services needs to have like the real URL that will map to the relay miner. That's why we wanted to give all this flexibility to node runners to configure their thing. And so let's just add one uh, for the demo purpose. Any questions to this point? Okay, seems like. So now finally we have another concept called address groups. And the purpose of address group is a logical organization of how keys are grouped in your application. This is useful for many things. Like let's say you have certain customers that you want to give it a certain rev share. You have different chains where you have a different like James. I think you mentioned something like that. Chains would be useful for that too. But let's say for now, like general. Well, this is my general service that I want to offer, and it's going to be running in going into this particular relay miner. And for any given node that I'm going to serve with this address group, I want to select the different services that are going to be pre-configured on that. Hopefully that makes sense. And then you can see here, like this is the expected relay miner URL that is going to be configured in the suppliers. So here you have multiple things that you can do. We can define the different shares that we want to have. Like let's say as a node runner, I want to put my, let me find in a given account, it doesn't really matter. But I want my revenue to go into this account and I want my revenue to be so 25%. That's the deal I have. Or in this case, 24, and then I'm going to add a supplier share. This is a concept that it's been discussed. I don't know, no runners might tell here how you guys are doing it or if you think it's different. But the general idea with this is we wanted to give you an easy way to say, hey, give some of the share to the node itself, to the supplier itself, so that it never runs out of money. So it needs money to do the proofs, it needs money to to this thing. So that's why we added this concept, kind of an easy way to keep the money, keep money on the supplier. Another thing that you can do here, if you wanted to, like I said, these are logical ways to organize your suppliers, is you can link particular addresses here, which what this means is that anytime a user comes with this output address, it's gonna always be mapped to this particular address. So these are ways for you to say, I want to have a specific deals with a specific customer. So this is a way of you to do. Hopefully this makes sense. Please tell me you have at least one question at this point. I know it's a lot of information.
Some people might not have questions until they watch the recording again afterwards to review.
Okay. So I'm going to set up this, and then this is another concept that we wanted to touch on because we ended up calling this delegators. The delegators are what we refer by delegators are the actual state igniter instances that are user facing that we want to serve. And James pointed out yesterday when we did an initial demo that this might be confusing. So we're very open to suggestions here on what would be an appropriate name that's not confusing the proposed dispatchers. Because this is what it is. It's a way for us to let you decide who you want to work with. In this particular case, this is coming from the centralized igniter governance. I can show you that really quick and what I mean by that. We have this is completely open source, by the way. So you have a governance where we keep a particular list of vetted middlemen or delegators and providers. The way they are identified with is by a public key. Same thing with the providers. So you have to do this, and eventually there's going to be some governance around this, like how do we add new ones, the process that they need to go through, and all that. But this is where we're pulling this information from. So you see here, it pulled the only one that is available right now. So I'm just gonna enable it and move on. So this is all that is required for you to set up a provider instance initially. This is how it looks on your overview dashboard. Like you get your rewards based on the nodes that different reward URLs reward addresses that you have. And that's why we use the indexer API to get this information. So you also have management here, like of the different concepts. I just wanted to touch briefly on the keys concept because this is the most useful one. Like it doesn't serve any purpose on no runner if you get a state and you what do I do next? Then the general idea is that when you get new keys, you're going to be able to export them into a format that is compliant with the key hydrating tool that we have for Relay Miner. I think Jorge made that one. So you can literally just, I have new addresses. You can pull them, go and put them in your Relay Miner. Another thing that is going to be available as well is the other way around. Like you go and have a bunch of keys that you pre-generated in your Relay Miner, so you don't have to restart it. So you can come back here and import, and they will become available for users to pick, or not to pick, to get automatically when they request new suppliers. Any questions at this point? Okay, so finally you have your.
There was one question from Breezy.
Yeah.
He said, if you click on add share, does it give you the option to add another share address?
Oh, yes, you can add as many as you want, as long as it doesn't go beyond 800%. Yeah, so absolutely. You can come here and add new ones. Absolutely, yeah. You can add things. The same for services, like we only have one configured, but then here you can have as many as you want. Right now, I think there is no limit. That's why we removed the limit. I think it's 8. It's going to be a limit of 8 at some point. What was this? What you were referring to, Breezy? Oh, cool. Okay. So, if there are no more questions on the provider side of things, we're still polishing it a little bit, but it's fundamentally ready. And it's, like I said, it's completely open source. Please feel always free to come over, download it, clone the code, try it out. I'm going to be adding some more technical documentation for setting it up locally and adding some helpful Docker Compose files so that you don't have to go through all this stuff.
Michael asked, what does internal storage button do on the add share tab?
On the internal, what do you mean? I'm sorry. Internal use only. Sorry. Yeah. My bad. I missed this completely. So let's say you want to have a particular set of configurations that you don't want to ever be exposed to end users. So you can make it completely private. Like, yeah, I have these addresses, but I don't want this to be exposed for open public. So you can make it internal. Another way you can think about this is the only thing that overrides this is if you have linked address. So linked address have priority over this. So let's say you have a very special deal with someone, anyone, I don't know, and then you want to have this REST share configuration. You can make it completely private. It will not be automatically served from this other script, unless it's someone with who you have this deal with. Hopefully that helps clarify.
Regarding
That's
importing
correct.
keys. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead. I'm reading it out
Yeah.
because some people won't see the question, but regarding importing keys, if keys are pre-generated, is the idea that Igniter would use them rather than generating new ones for the customers?
Absolutely, absolutely. By default, it will always generate new ones. That's okay. You don't have to have keys, but that's the principle there. Like, hey, I have this address that's already configured on my relay miner. So use them if available. Yeah, that's completely correct. So I wanted to also touch briefly on the end user side of things, just so that we can see at least the flow. This is a landing page that is a little bit configurable, like the name of the State Igniter instance. You can set some of these things. The login flow is, again, just a signature. And the setup flow is very similar, but it's a smaller in a sense. So you need to provide like a node that you're going to be using, a RESTful API, and an indexer API. There's a little bit more information that you can provide here. You can specify a fee that you want to have, or like it's going to be charged by people coming through this particular dispatcher or delegator. So this gets added when we stake. I'm gonna show a little bit more of that in a second. Let me just get any address. It doesn't really matter. So Dupop was automatically selected from this list. Like I said, same principle. We're gonna allow for more granular control here. Like we want to allow for you, if you don't want to use this list at all, you want to have something completely private, you should be able to do that. So we're gonna add interfaces to support that. We would like to do that too. So that's all we need to get set up. And from the administration perspective, we only allow changing the providers eventually as we learn more, like what kind of things we need to control here. So we're going to be adding those. And then you can always go back to your settings and update them. So I am going to sign out, and I'm going to come back in with a actual user with money. I have to disconnect from this. Give me a second. And let me find the user with points. So not much to see because obviously there is no data. You haven't done anything, but I wanted to talk a little bit about touch a little bit on the stake process or what it looks like for end users. The general idea here is to make it as simple as we possibly can. And essentially, it's a multi-step process, completely guided process for end users. where they would select the amount that they want to stake. They would, oh, sorry for that. This takes a little bit of time. This one, like, a certain amount of moment of time to like check the health of different providers. That's why it doesn't show up here. I'm sorry, because it was configured, but it hasn't go through the settings and validated that it's there. This is a completely automated process. If you're curious how we're doing this in the architectural perspective, you can see some of that in the repository documents. So you can see here that you're going to be charged approximately 24%. Of the rewards, as you saw, we configured in that other address group. So you see here a summary. The user will see a summary. I wanted to show maybe a little bit of what the flow is for the more technical users if you have questions and things like that. So essentially, the user is being told that they will be signing two transactions. One is the actual stake transaction, and the other one is a transfer of 5 POKT that we automatically add and send it to the node. So the node has a little bit of means to operate in Spark. That's all. These are also configurable information. So before we move to show that, I wanted to show a little bit of what I was talking about earlier. So what just happened, hopefully this is not too small, but essentially what we sent over was, hey, I want one node of this amount for this by this owner. And essentially, and this is the ref share that is configured on this particular instance, and this is the delegator address or the address where I expect to get this ref share. Let me know if you have questions to that. And then pretty much the response is essentially a ready to stake transaction where the node runner using all its configuration and the information the user just gave generated like endpoints, services, ref share for each of these services, like everything that is needed to stake this node. Generated a new operator address and prepare the services, setting also the stake amount here. So from the end user side of things, what the user is requested to do, like we said, is, hey, there are two transactions here that you've been asked to sign. The reason when the user signs these transactions, we're going to store it for delivery. Like I said, we don't hold any keys. We don't do anything like that for the user. It's the user that controls their items on their own wallet. What we do store is like the transaction operation. So at this point, the transaction is scheduled to be sent to the network. The user can see this information here. This takes a few minutes. I apologize for this. We're having a little bit of infrastructure issues that I'm correcting. So this transaction will not be executed right now because those issues are resolving it. But essentially, this is what the user gets. Once the transaction is successfully processed, we generate an actual node with a little bit of information, more deep, more clear, or supplier specific information. Any questions to this flow?
Yeah, we've had a couple that came by here. One was Zatar. He asked, can end user request to stake a validator versus a supplier?
Not at this point. We only support suppliers right now.
Okay. And Breezy asked, I'm sorry, what was the last registration for? I'm not sure which part that was referring to.
Breezy was asking, what's the last registration that I did was for the actual end user application, if that's what you're referring to.
Okay.
I initially set up the provider service, and now later I set up the actual delegator or dispatcher service.
And then Web3 Soul Mine asked, if I stake a node with someone else, is it possible to share the rewards with 2 wallets? Like, is that a supported feature?
That's an interesting question. No, we don't do that. Let's say what you're referring to is like you want to allow, like, let's say I want to stake a node, but I want to divide the shares between these and these wallets. No, it's not supported, but it's a great question. Definitely something we can bring into this question. Sounds completely doable.
Beautiful. And then Breezy is typing still. Why is the user being asked for API and endpoint URL? Why aren't they already set?
Sorry. Yeah, that's a good question. The end user is not expected to set up the application. That setup is me as the administrator of this. I just wanted to show you guys. The end user is only expected to sign in using the sign in flow that I showed, which is sign a message and go into the app. Sorry for the confusion there. I'll be more careful to make that clear.
Will the Igniter API be made available for third-party staking services to integrate into their existing applications? Oh, even better than that, my friend. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Essentially, this is completely open source, and you can create your own stake igniter one and run it if you wanted to. That's one thing. You can use the provider APIs, all of them that are available. You can, let's say, if you wanted to, you can come here and find out about this. Essentially, the only thing that you would probably need to, probably not, you will need to, is be registered yourself as a middleman or a delegator before you can use any of these programs. Because the communication is completely trustless. The way we do it is like you have to sign the message and send that signature saying, hey, it's me. Then on the other side, the provider can decide whether it wants to receive your message or not based on the public keys available at governance. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, and just as a follow-up point on that, because it's fully open source, the default treatment is to show all of the registered providers as an option for staking. But if you simply want to incorporate this UI into your own staking service, you have full permission and encouragement to fork it, to make whatever changes you want to it, to brand it to your service and change the UI styling to your service, and to make sure that you're the only provider that your instance of it can be used for. So this is a tool that's been paid for by the foundation and developed for the ecosystem at large that by default will support all providers. We're going to run a staking.pokt.network instance ourselves, which has all included providers listed. But if you just want to modify this to use for your own staking service only, you are welcome and encouraged to do so.
Okay, I think we have 3 good questions. I don't know if you want to read them first, James.
Yeah, is it also possible to add an uptime plus relay score for the nodes that you could choose from? That's, I mean, there's I've seen a few different thoughts about how to approach that sort of thing. I think that would be outside of the scope of this particular tool. One of the things that we're doing in our health network is a more node-based kind of health score type setup, but that's also really arbitrary when you talk about like relay score. We're really talking about general latency and accuracy, that sort of thing. So I think that would be outside of the scope of this. Zatar asked, will the how-to instructions for dummies be included with the soon-to-be posted Pocket Docs? Yes, they would, but also we're working with the Pocket Scan team to make sure that the interface is as clear and intuitive as possible. So that will be an iterative process where we make updates and changes in the instruction flow to try and make that simple. We don't want to have to require a separate docs listing to be able to use it. It should be intuitive for fairly non-technical users.
Yeah, that's correct. And also maybe the technical documentation can be part of the Pocket Docs. We're working as best as we can to keep our own repository documentation up to date, and maybe later we can migrate those to the official Pocket Docs. So Breezy was asking, each domain have to configure, each admin has to configure 2 components. Well, yes, if you want to use both components. Like, let's say you're just a node runner that you just want to be available for the general purpose of the stake igniter served by the Pocket Foundation. You can just configure your own provider and go through the governance process and become available. You don't need to configure your own stake igniter. That's one case. Or the same thing is also um, the opposite thing is also possible. Like, let's say you don't want to run nodes, you just want to offer this service by yourself, and you can do that. Like, you can just run a stake igniter, run your own promotion, and if you can get customers, you're good.
For end users who want to compare providers, what info, if any, will be available through this?
This is a good question. It's not available right now, but the general idea is to have it available, yes, but we're still kind of thinking through what is this information, like what information we need to collect, how to make it fully user friendly, like what information is really relevant to users to be before they can choose a provider. But yes, absolutely, that's part of. We absolutely agree that's part of the scope of this. For some form of provider dashboard, like, hey, these are the numbers for this provider. These are the rankings, maybe.
Yeah, and that's something that we're working through with, some of the scoring metrics that we're trying to have integrated into, Path and Pocket Scan and whatever other metrics dashboards that we're using, because it's not enough to say, okay, this provider has a 50% rev share or whatever. That is one metric, but that metric isn't going to be useful or meaningful if that provider has a 50% failure rate on relays and they're often being excluded from sessions because of that. So a provider score is a more complex number that needs to take multiple things into account, and that's something that's sort of in development right now. Other questions?
Casey, I don't know if you want to go a little bit more on that last question. Seems like you are. I don't not sure if you're clear and I meant the 2 component configuration.
Yeah, I think we covered everything, didn't we? Let's see. Yeah, okay. I think we're good. Any other last questions? I know we're running a little bit long, but this is a big piece of software that's being deployed that we've had in progress for close to a year now. So I expected that it would take a bit of time to walk through.
So I just wanted to add, if there are no more questions for you, our aim is to have this released in mainnet on Monday. That's why we wanted to get as much feedback as we can. So please reach out if you have further questions. You can find me in Discord. You can reach out to me, Alan, or anyone from the Public Scan team, and we'll be as responsive we possibly can.
Beautiful. You can, of course, tag folks in the community chat channel on our Discord if you want to. Oh yeah, you're still screen sharing, just FYI. If you want to get more information from them, or to add suggestions, or to help test, or any sort of input at all, these kinds of things are very much community driven, and this is going to be a community piece of software, so we want people to be engaging with it. Merdad said, seems like we need to start rewriting the docs sooner rather than later. I agree completely. So I am trying my very best to be caught up enough to help start that kickoff, hopefully by the end of this week, if possible. I know that Ian has been very good about pinging me to remind me that that's outstanding. So Sasquatch Ian, to be clear. I see one more message from Zatar coming in. If any provider can join, will there be a way to bar eject evildoers? So that's a really good question. One of the things that we talked about with the Pocket Scan team early on was how do we try to enforce that sort of a thing? And to be perfectly honest, it's very difficult in an open source environment to apply that sort of filtering, because that's literally the exact opposite of permissionless and decentralized, right? So the thing that we have come down to a conclusion on is that the foundation will own the repository for the central JSON list, which is where providers are stored when they're included in the general selection provider list. And we can manually remove providers from that if they're proven to be bad actors. So they won't show up in our list of providers in the dropdown for the version that we run. And I think that some of the other folks who are running the full list version, like the Pocket Scan folks, would be using that same JSON list. That being said, it is open source, so anyone anywhere can spin up their own version of this. And there isn't a way to stop that from being done. So I think that that's mostly just going to be a matter of community members who are using the full provider list can choose to access the centrally managed list that the foundation is running. But I think a lot of folks who are integrating this software are probably just going to trim that list down to only use their service. That's how it's most useful. So that's in all likelihood, the actual use of the full provider list will only be by organizations like the foundation. And obviously, if we have somebody that we see as a bad actor, we'll make sure they're not included. That will be at staking.pocket.network. Everybody else, I would assume that they're going to do their own version for their node runner service. And it'd be awfully cool if you included the full list, but I wouldn't really expect you to. Any other questions? All right, well, I think we're good. That was a long run today. I appreciate everybody hanging out. We are super excited to finally be kicking the Igniter application out. The plan is to take that to mainnet on Monday, barring any last minute issues that may arise. So if you have questions or other thoughts about getting things implemented, please make sure you get them in quick. You can tag them in Discord. And that is all for this week. So thank you, everybody. We will see you again, same time, same channel next week.